Hey, what is going on, Twintendo Nation? Hope you're having an awesome day. Now, before I took my break from YouTube, I was working on a video about my favourite Pokemon movies so I could release the video in time for the 20th Pokemon movies theatrical release, and it's safe to say that didn't happen. But I thought this would still be a fun video to make and to share my own opinions on the Pokemon films. I feel like it's an area in Pokemon that's not really discussed that much compared to the anime and the games. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at the top 10 best Pokemon movies. And when I say best, I don't mean this is, the definitive video. This decides the best Pokemon movies. These are just my personal favourites. And to be honest, this list that I've made always changes, to be honest. Apart from a few of the movies that always stay in the favourite category, a lot of them, drop in and out quite often. So maybe in a year's time, this list will be different. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy with the choices I made for this video. Now, question of the day to you guys, obvious question, what is your favourite Pokemon movie and why? You're welcome to make a list like I did, or just talk about one film in particular. Also guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop it a like. Let's aim for 2,000 likes after the second Pokemon movie, Pokemon 2000, which may or may not be making an appearance in this video. And of course, if you like what I do and want to see more, make sure to hit that subscribe button to become a part of the Twintendo Nation. And with all that out the way guys, let's start the video. Starting off our list is the 13th Pokemon movie, Zoroark Master of Illusions. You could say it's unlucky number 13 as it doesn't make it any higher than number 10, but don't let that fool you, this is a good movie. Although the film says it's about Zoroark, it mainly centres around its kid, Zorua, who for some reason can talk telepathically. It's never really explained as to why it can, and it's a bit jarring that a young Pokemon can talk, yet its mother Zoroark can't. The film starts with Ash, Brock and Dawn going to the Crown City to watch a Pokemon sport called Baka, which is essentially a mix of basketball and soccer if you go off its name. Being a fan of both of those sports, I'm a little disappointed this idea wasn't explored any further or introduced into any Pokemon game. Anyway, Ash and the gang stumble across the Zorua, who escapes from the main villain of the film, Kodai. The plot of the film is basically reuniting Zorua with its mom Zoroark, whilst Kodai uses Zoroark's power to go after Celebi. Essentially, it's a Gen 2 nostalgia overload, as Entei, Raikou and Suicune make appearances, as well as their shiny versions. Although the movie is a fun watch, the plot is as predictable as they come, with the villain being revealed so early and no plot twist. The film is easy watching, for better or worse. Still, it's a Pokemon film that's worth watching, especially if you grew up on Generation 2. Next up is the most recent Pokemon film, Pokemon the Movie I Choose You. Now granted, I was invited to the early pre-screening to see this film, but that had no impact on my opinion on the film itself. In fact, I was pretty underwhelmed about the film before seeing it, as I heard mixed opinions when it was released in Japan. Now let me say a few things before discussing about this film. When I was originally writing the script a few months ago, I thought the movie was the most pointless Pokemon film of all time. It's a retelling of what Ash's adventure could have been just to celebrate the anime's 20th anniversary, and I thought it's likely they won't revisit this plot. However, from the teaser we got for the 21st film, it suggests that might not be the case. But for those who were disappointed about this film being a retelling, I totally get it. I'd have much preferred all the old characters like Brock, Misty, May, Dawn and Serena to get together and play a big part in the film to celebrate the anime's 20th anniversary rather than what we got. But when viewing the film, you need to put those differences aside and just enjoy it for what it is. It's the best looking Pokemon film by a long mile, and some battle scenes reminded me of why I loved Pokemon in the first place. However, the new characters, although weren't bad, could easily have been Brock and Misty instead, so I really don't get their purpose in the film. Secondly, the plot is a little hit and miss. Although it's more about the journey, there are a few scenes that almost ruin the entire film. Those who have seen it will know what I'm on about. But at the same time, there were also scenes in the film that really portrayed how incredible the world of Pokemon really is, and that's what I took away from this film the most. Without a doubt, this film will divide Pokemon fans, and quite possibly, I might like it less and less as time goes on, as I can't imagine it aging too well. But I will definitely see this film again, and probably make a second judgment on it, but for now, it makes it onto this list. Coming in at number 8 is the 11th Pokemon movie, Giratina and the Sky Warrior. Now last time I'd watched it was 8 years ago until I actually watched it at the end of 2017, and I don't think I'd watched it all the way through, so I was a little skeptical whether I'd actually enjoy this film, but it turns out it was one of the better Pokemon films out there. The plot isn't amazing and the main antagonist is pretty lackluster, especially his reasoning for his evil actions, but all in all, it's a good film. The film centres around Shaman, who is trying to reach the Greater Deer Garden to meet up with its own kind. Ash and the gang try to help Shaman locate it, whilst the main villain Zero wants to use Shaman to bring Giratina out of the distortion world so he can have the place all to himself. Talk about selfish, right? Without oversimplifying things too much, Zero tries to drain Giratina of its power, which would allow him to access both worlds at will, and by doing so would kill Giratina. Luckily, Ash and the gang free Giratina in the nick of time. However, due to the disturbances in the distortion world, the real world begins to suffer as the two are connected. We then get possibly the most random legendary cameo with Regigigas of all Pokemon coming to help stop a huge glacier from destroying the area. The story goes as you would expect, and Shaman reunites with the other Shaman and all is right in the Pokemon world. Of course that is oversimplifying it, but the story isn't really one of the film's strong points. Another problem with the film is Shaman's personality, as he tried to give it a little bit of attitude, but for me this backfired and made Shaman come across as a brat. However, I really loved the setting for this film, which was based off a few locations in Norway. Might even want to see a generation based around Norway, it looks so nice. Also, this was the first movie that was a direct sequel, as the plot followed on from the Rise of Darkrai, and will continue on further into the next Pokemon film. And I really enjoyed the change of direction, as it would always seem like Ash and the gang would forget about the events in the films. Although this film isn't the best of the Diamond and Pearl series, it's still a good one and deserves a watch. From here on out, this is where the choice between films gets really tough. Apart from the first and second spot on this list, a lot of the order of these films could be changed around, but for number 7 I decided to choose the 10th Pokemon film, The Rise of Darkrai. The first film of the Diamond and Pearl series was a great hit, and I know it's a lot of people's favourite. The film centres around the legendary Pokemon Dialga and Palkia and the mythical Pokemon Darkrai. The plot is fairly simple for a Pokemon film. Dialga and Palkia are battling it out as their two dimensions have merged due to Arceus' ongoing awakening, with each Pokemon thinking the other has invaded their territory. As Darkrai can sense the battle between the two, it tries to get everyone to leave by putting most of the trainers' Pokemon in the city to sleep with Dark Void. It also tells Ash and the gang to go away a lot, which is honestly my main complaint with the film. The thing is, Darkrai has good intentions, as it is trying to save the town from Dialga and Palkia. The problem is that it causes multiple misunderstandings, and consequently everyone believes Darkrai is behind the weird phenomenons occurring in the town due to Dialga and Palkia's fight. It could have at least tried to explain the situation as it can talk, but instead it let the misunderstandings get out of control, which actually made things a lot worse for Darkrai. But with that aside, the film is a great one, with some really good battle scenes, as well as some tense moments towards the end of the film, where Ash and Dawn tried to climb the space-time tower to play the song Erasion, which calms Dialga and Palkia. That part of the plot is a little bit disappointing, as we don't know why the song helps calm Pokemon. Dialga and Palkia, who are millions of years old and most likely have never heard music before, who are having a very serious feud, just forget about it just because of a song. That part is a little hard to believe, and I think it could have ended a little better. But apart from that, this is still a very good film and one of my favourites from the Diamond and Pearl series. Coming in at number 6 was recently voted as the fan favourite Pokemon film in Japan. This is the 5th Pokemon film, Pokemon Heroes. As I mentioned, this is one of the most popular Pokemon films, and I know a lot of you watching this video will have this as one of your favourites, maybe at number 1. So as you might be able to tell, this is a very good film, but why is it at number 6 for me? Well, unlike a lot of the Pokemon films on this list, I hadn't seen this film till very recent, which was quite surprising since I've known all this time how good the film is. The only reason I can think of as to why it's taken me so long to get around to watching this is that I had the ending spoiled to me a long time ago, which is quite important to the film. But anyway, since this is one of the only older Pokemon films I've watched recently, there isn't any nostalgia value unfortunately. The story is pretty good, and the setting for the film, which is based on Venice, is fantastic, definitely one of the best settings in any Pokemon film. I was slightly disappointed about the main villains, Annie and Oakley, as their motivations and intentions were not explained very well. It was just a very cliche, let's take over the world rubbish. Now the only other fault I had with this film, which to be honest wasn't too much of a problem, was that the film focuses solely on Ash, so Misty and Brock are pretty much bystanders for the entire film, which to me is a real shame. But Latios and Latias definitely make up for the lack of his travelling companions, as they fill the void quite well, especially Latias. Without spoiling too much, the ending is definitely one of the best, and leaves the film on a relatively high note. Pokémon Heroes is a great film, and could honestly make it higher on this list over time, as it's one of the few Pokémon films I never saw till recently, as I said, and who knows, maybe it could break into the top 3 eventually. Let's be honest, there wouldn't be a best Pokémon movie video without including this film. This is of course the first Pokémon movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back. The film is a classic, even if we're not talking exclusively about Pokémon films. Now when I rewatched this film, it wasn't as good as I remembered, but because this film is so iconic and so nostalgic for me, since I watched it a long time ago when I was little, I had to put it this high up on the list. I assume you've all seen this film, but for those who haven't or need a recap, the film centres around Mewtwo, who was being mistreated at the hands of Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket. Because of this, Mewtwo has a large distrust towards humans and seeks to separate Pokemon from them using an army of cloned Pokemon. What I like about this film is that it really looks at the morals and ethics between Pokemon and their trainers. Mewtwo is a great antagonist as his motives are well explained and his character really develops throughout the film. There are also some very iconic scenes in this film and some great quotes to take away as well. However, I do have a few issues with this movie. Firstly, I was disappointed that Giovanni wasn't involved too much in the film, especially due to Mewtwo's history with him. Although this issue is patched up with the movie sequel, Mewtwo Returns, which I didn't really classify as a Pokemon movie since it's technically like a TV movie, but I don't know, some of you might classify it as one, I personally didn't. But anyway, another fault I have with this film is at the end, Mewtwo wipes the memories of all of those involved, which makes the film a little pointless. But nonetheless, this is a great film, and yes, nostalgia definitely plays a big part in me putting this film as high as it is, but it deserves the praise it receives. Next up is another one of the first Pokemon movies, and is again a fan favourite. This is the third film, Spell of the Unknown. Now I've watched this film 3 times, and 2 of the times I didn't really enjoy it. In fact, I thought the film was very overrated. So when I watched the film towards the end of 2017 to see if I still felt the same, I was really surprised how much I enjoyed it the 3rd time round. Now there are a few problems with the plot, especially the appearance of the Unknown, who have barely any explanation as to what their purpose is, why they abduct Molly's father Spencer, which is a key plot point, and where he even goes for that matter. Also, why do they abduct Spencer but bring Molly's imagination to life? Talk about double standards. Apart from that, the plot of the film is pretty good. Nowhere near the best, but it makes the film much more unique than the others. This is one of the only Pokemon films that doesn't really have a villain, it's just Ash and the gang trying to solve the problem at hand. And speaking of Ash and the gang, it's nice to see Brock and Misty feature a bit more, as they barely featured in the previous Pokemon films. The film still mainly focuses on Ash as you might expect, but Brock and Misty keep the story feeling refreshing as they show off their Pokemon in battles against Molly. But probably the best part of this film, especially if you were a fan of Ash's original team, is that we see Charizard make a return from Charisific Valley, where it had been training since Ash left it during the start of his journeys through Johto. This was an emotional moment for viewers as we didn't think we'd see Charizard again, especially after what happened to Ash's Butterfree and Pidgeot. With Charizard's help, Ash and the gang were able to stop Molly's imagination running wild and put an end to the Unknown. After watching the film 3 times, I can definitely see its appeal now. My only real problem with it is that the story is a little confusing and convoluted, but besides that, it's a great Pokemon movie. Taking the 3rd spot on this list is my guilty pleasure Pokemon movie, Pokemon Ranger and the Temple of the Sea. Yeah, I'm not ashamed to like this film, and believe me, I know there are a lot of weird moments in this film that aren't explained well, but this is such a super nostalgic movie for me. Although I grew up on the first series of the Pokemon anime, my favourite series will always be Pokemon Advance, as it was the first time I was playing the games alongside watching the anime, since my first game was Pokemon Ruby. This made me greatly appreciate the places Ash and the gang visited whilst they were in the Hoenn region. After watching the Pokemon Advance series every day, we were given the Manaphy movie as our final farewell to May and Max. Unless you lived in Japan, this movie aired on TV after the Advance series had finished, so to me, it was a farewell. One of the best parts about this film is that although it wraps up the Advance series, they gave the spotlight of the film to May and not Ash. Although Ash does play a big role in the film, this is one of the rare instances, if not the only time a Pokemon film is centered around someone else. The plot is essentially Ash and May bringing Manaphy back to its home. The plot is simple but has a less serious tone, which really benefits it as the film is more about the journey than the destination. The film ends with May tearfully saying goodbye to Manaphy, which is a fitting end to the Advance series as it portrays the fans' emotions of the end of an era and the start of a new adventure. My only problem with this film is that it's the first film with the new English voice actors, and while it isn't too bad, it's sad that the original voice actors weren't allowed to finish off the advanced series. But that's only a personal preference of mine and doesn't take away any value from this movie. For any Pokemon fans out there, Pokemon Ranger and the Temple of the Sea is definitely a movie worth watching. Missing out on the number 1 spot is the first Pokemon film I watched as a kid and the only Pokemon film I own on VHS. This is the second Pokemon movie, Pokemon 2000. I can't remember how many times I watched this film as a kid, but it was a lot. I didn't think Pokemon films could get any better than this, although obviously there was one that just edged it in the end, but this movie is great, and the reason why Lugia is one of my favourite Pokemon. This movie's plot centres around Ash gathering 3 glass orbs as part of the Shamuti Islands ritual. However, whilst the task should have been harmless, the legendary trio of Articuno, Moltres and Zapdos have been disturbed by Lawrence III, who is trying to capture Lugia for his collection. These disturbances unbalance the order of the legendary birds and create extreme weather all around the Pokemon world. Although Lugia doesn't appear as much as I'd like, and the repetitive nature of the plot could annoy a few people, I still think the movie is a really good one. The music is fantastic, it introduced us to a lot of Generation 2 Pokemon for the first time, and Team Rocket's role in this film was very memorable, as they played the good guys for once. My only real problem with this is that Tracy is part of Ash's gang, so as you can imagine there is very little Brock in this film. Since Brock is one of my favourite characters of all time, it's disappointing that he didn't have a role in this film. Apart from that, this film is superb and deserves to be remembered as one of the best Pokemon movies out there. So after going through 9 great Pokemon films, we're left with my number 1, which is honestly pretty far ahead in the lead. This is the 8th Pokemon movie, Lucario and the Mystery of Mew. So I'm not sure if anyone else is like this, but normally after I've watched a film, I won't want to watch it again for a couple of years since I know the story, the ending, and pretty much everything else that happens. But for some reason, Lucario and the Mystery of Mew was one of those rare films that I could watch over and over again. In fact, I used to watch it weekly at one point until I decided to give it a break. Now I make sure I watch it at least once a year, so you're probably wondering why do I like it so much? Well, out of all the Pokemon stories to that point, it was one of the few that didn't feel copied and cliché, as there wasn't a villain. Destiny Deoxys was similar in terms of story, but nowhere near as good. I also love the setting for this film, which is based off the Neuschwanstein Castle in Bavaria, Germany. I think I pronounced that right. The film also centres around one of my favourite Pokemon, Lucario, who plays a great role throughout the movie. So those are the very basic reasons as to why I like the film, but let's go into a bit more detail about the story, which is in my opinion the film's strongest aspect. The film centres around Ash and Lucario's journey to the Tree of Beginning, where Pikachu is waiting for Ash. Now the reason why Pikachu is at the Tree of Beginning is because it decided to protect Mew from a pair of Weavile that are owned by a trainer called Kid. Now at first you think Kid is the movie's villain, but it turns out she was just trying to monitor the link between Mew and the Tree of Beginning by putting a tracker on Mew, not actually trying to attack it. This was so refreshing to see, as usually around this point in a Pokemon film the villain would be revealed, but it subverted our expectations by revealing that in fact there was no villain. The plot is pretty much straightforward from then onwards. I mean, I could talk about it for hours, but I won't waste your time. To sum up this film, it still holds up really well to this day, the animation looks great, the story is in my opinion the best from any Pokemon film, and there's enough twists and turns throughout the movie to keep it very interesting. For me, this is as perfect as Pokemon movies come. So those are the top 10 best Pokemon movies. Let me know in the comments what your favourite Pokemon movie is and why. And also, fans of Lucario and Mystery of Mew, I definitely want to hear from you guys because I'd love to have a discussion about this film as to why it's so good. Also, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, and if you want to see more like this, then hit that subscribe button down below to become a part of the Twintendo Nation. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, hope you have an awesome day, and I will see you on the next video. Peace!